On the surface, The Cabin in the Woods is about a group of college kids that go to, you're never gonna believe this, a cabin in the woods. It sounds like a standard horror movie scenario, but it's not what you think.
I'm gonna pick up some power drills, liberate my cabinets. Are you even listening to me?
This movie is about the stories that make us feel fear, the people who tell those stories, and the audience that demands to be scared. We're talking all about it this week in Kaden's Movie Club. Spoilers ahead, so if you haven't seen it, beat it. We've been talking about horror movies this month, but when it comes to The Cabin in the Woods, I think it's important to ask, what's the difference between parody and satire? These terms are used pretty broadly, and they've evolved over time, so I'm gonna provide the Kaden definition. Don't come at me with a screenshot of Google, okay? A parody is when a story directly imitates another story for comedic effect. So think Scary Movie.
Hello, Drew.
The whole thing pulls scenes directly from other movies but then makes it into a joke. A satire is when a story imitates another type of story to offer commentary. Think Scream.
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie. Never, ever, ever, under any circumstances say, I'll be right back, because you won't be back.
It's an original story and is still intended to be a genuine horror movie, but the characters in the story are aware of horror movie tropes. Parodies and satires aren't mutually exclusive, there can be overlap. So the question is, where does The Cabin in the Woods fall? Because right off the bat, the very first scene clues us in that the movie has something more up its sleeve.
That means there's just Japan. Japan and us.
Well, it's not the first time it's come down to that.
Japan has a perfect record.
We're number 2, we try harder.
You guys better not be messing around in there.
Ooh, does this mean you're not in the betting pool this year? Big money.
The story then presents us with a series of horror movie stereotypes. First, we're introduced to the characters. The innocent main girl, the flirty and fun friend, her jock boyfriend, the smart guy, and of course, the comedic relief. Once in the cabin, the characters end up in a creepy basement. They mess with something they're not supposed to, and before you know it, they're being attacked by a family of zombies. And of course, the group makes it even easier to get picked off one by one when they decide to split up.
We should split up. We can cover more ground that way.
Yeah. Yeah, good idea.
It's all textbook horror movie stuff, but the movie keeps telling us that it is aware of these stereotypes every time we come back to these guys. We'll call them the controllers. When the characters start acting dumb, they're actually being manipulated.
We have to stay together. This isn't right. We should split up.
The controllers are controlling the narrative, and it's through them that we start to realize this isn't really a movie about a cabin in the woods at all, or dumb college kids, or zombies. It's about what those ideas mean to us as an audience. For instance, let's take a look at the scene when the group goes down into the basement. But each character is interacting with a different cursed object. And each one of those objects could have resulted in a different monster. The controllers even take bets on what they think the monster will be.
That's not fair. I had zombies too.
Yes, you did. Yes, you had zombies. But this is zombie redneck torture family, see? They're entirely separate species.
And that's because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what the monster is. A monster is just a tool for a storyteller. The real fear comes from the tactics of the storyteller. Which brings us to an important scene involving Kurt. The road that leads away from the cabin has suspiciously collapsed, so the 3 remaining characters are trapped. But then Kurt gets a bright idea. Hey, we have a motorcycle, I'll just jump across the ravine. I'm sure you've been watching a horror movie and noticed a solution that you feel like the characters just ignored. That's exactly what's happening here. Kurt notices a solution, but when he tries to jump the ravine, he collides with an invisible wall because he's trying to leave the bounds of the story. He's not supposed to be smart, he's supposed to be the dumb jock. We've all watched a horror movie where the characters make dumb decisions. Obviously, don't go in the scary basement, don't split up, don't ignore the warning from the creepy guy. And yet we look past these decisions. Why? Because we want to get the scary story. If our characters don't make these dumb mistakes, we don't get to see the monster. And we want to be scared by the monster, whatever it is. As much as we poke fun at these horror movie tropes, we as an audience depend on them. But the question is, what happens when it gets old? The Cabin in the Woods asks that same question. The controllers are doing all of this stuff for a reason. They keep referring to some mysterious audience that they're trying to entertain. We eventually find out that the audience is actually a group of ancient gods. The whole reason the horror movie ritual happens is to appease evil deities, which sounds ridiculous, and it is. But what do the gods represent? Which sounds ridiculous, and it is. But what do the gods represent? If the movie is a commentary about horror movies, then these gods would have to be the audience. They represent us. The controllers are the storytellers. They have all the power. Sigourney Weaver even comes in at the end and is referred to as the director. So, The Cabin in the Woods is a satirical comedy about horror movies. There's clearly an appreciation for the classic horror movie structure here, but it's also critiquing them by asking, are these tropes really scaring us anymore? Aren't we tired of seeing the same types of characters make the same types of mistakes? That's why we're presented with characters that don't initially fit the stereotypes. For example, Kurt doesn't start out as the dumb jock.
Professor Bennett covers this whole book and his lectures. You should read this. Gorofsky.
Marty, the dumb comedic relief character, clearly doesn't want to make the dumb decisions he's supposed to make.
I'm not sure it's awesome to be down here. I dare you all to go upstairs.
And in the end, Dana, the final girl, decides that these types of stories aren't worth saving.
It's time to give someone else a chance.
For me, the commentary here is that as much as we love these stories, it's time to let them die, to make way for new stories. Storytellers might be afraid the audience will reject it, but these stories and characters want to evolve. The Cabin in the Woods came out in 2011, so if we look at some of the most popular horror movies pre and post this point, do we feel like the commentary was on point? Did we see any kind of evolution in the type of horror movies that were being made? In recent years, the term elevated horror has become more popular. Whether you agree with the concept or not, the idea here is that horror movies can be really artsy and thematically deep. A new wave of horror movies like Get Out, Hereditary, and The Witch inspired the term because they used fear in film to address difficult topics in ways that felt new and interesting to people. Over the course of this month in Movie Club, we've been looking at that idea of fear in film. How there's an initial fear presented, but there's always an underlying fear. Storytellers use fear as a tool to discuss topics that may be difficult to address straight on. In Psycho, we're presented with the fear of crossing paths with an insane person. But there's a number of more common fears that drive the tension, like the fear that an impulsive decision could have disastrous consequences. In War of the Worlds, we watched the fear of an alien invasion, but the movie was made in the wake of 9/11 and presented a fear of disasters and their effects on society. In the others, we're stuck in a dark house haunted by ghosts, but the main character's true fear of life's uncertainties is infused into the entire story. And then, The Cabin in the Woods addresses this whole process. If scary stories are meant to make us feel fear so that we can process real-world problems, then there's an issue when the stories aren't scary anymore. There's a call to let fear in film continue to evolve. So, I know that horror movies aren't for everyone, except I think they kind of are. You don't have to like every horror movie, but I do think there's a horror movie out there for everyone. There's a movie for you that uses fear as a tool to speak to an underlying fear that resonates with your life experience. So even if you're typically not a spooky movie fan, it might be a good idea to be brave and try something new once in a while. You never know what kind of fears you might be able to conquer. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Let me know what you thought about The Cabin in the Woods or any of our other movies this month and how they related to our theme. And with that, we conclude our October Movie Club. I'll be announcing the movie lineup and theme for November tomorrow, so stay tuned. And if you want to stay in the know about Movie Club, you know where to go.